Welcome to Outrage Overload, a science podcast about outrage and lowering the temperature. We're told every day that Americans are at each other's throats, that we want this, the fights, the conflict, the outrage. But what if that story is just wrong?
Hi, my name is Adam Mizel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Us United, which is a movement to build unity in America. Started this about 4 years ago when I really had an epiphany moment after George Floyd was killed and said, I can't go back to business and finance. If people don't give time beyond just financial donations, things aren't really going to change. And I was fortunate enough to be in a place to be able to do that. And as I was yelling at the television trying to figure out what to do, my much smarter than I wife said, no one can hear you when you yell at the TV. Go do something. And so I've been an entrepreneur. I set off on a journey, and that's led us to building Us United and really trying to make a huge difference in building unity in America.
Adam Mizel spent the summer driving across the country. Purple pickup truck, film crew, thousands of conversations with ordinary Americans from Boston to Birmingham to Bozeman. And he didn't find a nation cheering on the chaos. He found people who want respect, who want to listen, who want to work together even when we disagree. No one told him, let's fight harder. Everyone told him, we want to fix this. So here's a question Adam asked over and over. If you were president tomorrow, just for a week, what would you do to bring Americans together? And the answers weren't radical, they weren't partisan, they were hopeful. I'm David Beckmeyer, and today on Outrage Overload, the hidden majority of Americans who are tired of being divided, and what happens when we stop waiting for someone else to fix democracy and start thinking like we're already in charge. With our guest, Adam Mizel. Adam Mizel, thank you so much for making time for our little program.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, it's great. When I first saw, this movement, which I hadn't seen before, kind of like I'm embarrassed about that. I was like loving it right off the bat. It's like, yes, this is what we need. This because kind of we have a lot of language problems in this space. Like, what is this stuff? What are we talking about? It's all kind of geeky and clunky. And this was like, yes, this is what it's about. Like, it's us. It's us. It's us, man. We're Americans, darn it.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. We're weird and we're goofy, and that's why we are going to be able to get through this. That's my take on it. But yeah, so I was going to ask a little bit about some stuff we talked about before that I thought was really quite interesting. We both know about the Listen First Coalition and the bridging movement there, and I attended the Bridging Movement Summit, and we had talked a little bit about some questions that came out of that, and you had made the comment that they kind of look like sort of had a liberal leaning intellectualism to them, and they might not resonate with a lot of people. So can you maybe elaborate that on a little bit of how you feel that way and what that reflects on kind of this broader struggle in the quote unquote bridge building movement?
Sure. Well, if you back up, and I don't love the term bridge building. That's why we focused on building unity. And I think it's important to start with what is that? And I'm sorry, what it's not. Unity is not uniformity. Unity is not unanimity. Unity is not we agree on everything, right? To me, it is respect in particular, communication, listening, and under it all, having a view that we're trying to work together against common goals as a team, right? And as you and I know, I've spent 2.5 months driving across the country this summer, and it was shocking to me that those 5 words and probably 5 or 6 others, almost everybody describe unity the same way in America. And it made me hopeful, actually. That's one piece. But to your specific question, I think there's a lot of people who struggle to really get engaged, right? And it's up to us. And so I push back against sort of bridge building and as your example, some of those questions, because I feel like they're a little too ethereal. They're a little too intellectual. And we Americans, the reason the Declaration of Independence starts with we the people, right? And it's still the case. Our government today, our media today reflects the culture of who we are today. If we don't like it, we can change it. We have to change it. And so, Us United reflects that of me and my co-founder Chris Swanson, who's a sheriff in Michigan, also running for governor of Michigan, and Ken Weddick, a junior known as the Free Hugs guy. It's our ethos that we have to take action, and we have to change culture, and we have to engage we the people. And so, a lot of the intellectual debate, there's a lot of reason and logic, and there's tools, but I think it's a lot simpler. It really is, which is, hey, Americans, we can do little things differently every day, and we will change the culture and ultimately build unity in this country.
Yeah, so I want to explore that a little deeper on the idea of how Americans, how you heard people use sort of the same core words. Tell us a little bit about that. And I mean, you did there, but add a little more to that about like what were those words and what do you think that tells us about the country?
Yeah, well, the backup context, as I alluded, is this summer we did a Unity in Action road trip across the country. I got in a purple and white pickup truck with a film crew and drove everywhere. Few places flying because it's a really big country west of the Rockies, and you could spend 2 days driving between places. But we were always doing that function, and in that context, we were um, meeting with sheriffs. We created a sheriff's unity network, which I'm sure we'll talk about because they do a huge amount in building bridges in their communities that people don't realize. And we met with thousands and thousands of Americans just talking to them, right? And one question I asked everybody, I started with, hey, what does unity mean to you? How do you define it? And as I said, people used respect and listening and communication and teamwork and on the same team and following the golden rule and trust and empathy and building bridges and um, building friendships and a few other words. And to me, what was most important in that is that you can't fix a problem if you don't define it the same way. And I was amazed. It didn't matter whether someone was 80 or 20, whether they were, pick your religion, your skin color, your ethnicity, whether I was in Massachusetts or Texas or Montana. Same words. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because I do think that's part of the power of this country and what makes it special. But I was still a little surprised because, we all live in the media world and the political world we live in where it doesn't seem like people are on the same page on anything. And there they were on the same page. And that's powerful. And
Yeah,
then the
for
next
sure.
thing I heard related to that, and then the next question I would ask would be, do you think the country is getting more united or more divided? And the majority, not everyone, like on the definition, but the majority of people said, I think we're getting more united, which surprised me a bit. Those that didn't, and I'll come back to that in a minute, said, we want us to be more united. I mean, again, talking to thousands of people, we didn't run into anybody, and it was completely random. I mean, whether we were talking to people in front of a Bucky's in Texas or whether we were talking to people at a coffee shop in Lexington, Massachusetts, we weren't selecting anyone. Nobody came and said, this is good. We need to fight. We need to be divided, and we want it this way. I know those people are there, but we didn't find it. And that just tells me there aren't that many of them. And if they are, they're running away from the camera, which tells you something too. Um, but that's also encouraging because people want that. And what they then said is what we need most is hope and inspiration, but really hope. They're like, because we don't see on TV that we a minority in this view? Like we don't see it on TV. Like, and they're like, here I was showing up in a purple and white pickup truck and a baseball cap like I'm wearing and a t-shirt. And we were like, if you can do this, I can do something. Hope. And then would tell stories of, hey, this is what someone in Iowa said, or this is what someone in Arizona said, or this is what someone in Florida said when I'm in New Jersey. And they're like, wow, I'm not alone. I need more of this. I need to understand that people thinking the same way. And so in that, there were a lot of lessons learned. And again, I left hopeful. I mean, I was bringing hope, which I didn't realize I was doing, but I got a lot of hope from what we did. And that is, infused back into and what we're doing at Us United to say, we can do this. The point is we have to all engage a little bit. And that will change the culture because it will send the message and it will encourage people to do more. And that positive reinforcement, I mean, think of anything. If you get a positive reinforcement, you do something again. If you get negative, you're likely not to. Well, we need to provide some of that positive reinforcement.
Yeah, for sure. But you also did say when we were speaking before that you found a lot of voters who are looking for somebody that will, sort of burn down the system. So how do you kind of reconcile that with that hopeful message?
Well, I'm what I definitely have seen and heard, and both on our trip and I think in general, is that a lot of Americans are absolutely frustrated with the system, how the government works or doesn't work for them, and what's happening in the country. And for sure, observe people feeling that way, for sure. And there's a lot of data that will show, if you look back, a significant crossover vote of people who voted in 2008 and 2012 for Barack Obama voted in 2016, somewhat in 20, and certainly in 24 for Donald Trump. And you say, how could that be? And the answer is the commonality is we want the change. Who's going to the candidate that's going to give us change? And that's certainly out there for sure. But I asked one of the questions I also asked on this road trip most people, and so I'd ask anyone listening to this the same question. I'd say, "Hey, I would say I'm promoting you. Now, maybe you think this is a demotion, so before you accept the job, I'm promoting you, and I'm promoting you to president of the United States for a couple weeks, a month. What would you do if you were president to try to build unity in America? Let's make it real. You got the power. What would you do?" And you got a range of answers, but the most common one started with, "I would be respectful of everybody else. I would reach out to the other party and sit down and try to figure things out. I might put someone in my cabinet who was in the other party," whatever that may be. So there's this, yes, I'm frustrated that our government, but most people, when asked if they were president, basically said, and whether they were a supporter of our current president or not, I wouldn't behave like our current president because I don't think that's what the country wants or needs. And that's not how you build unity. And I mean, again, I was surprised that that was sort of, didn't matter what your political view was, that was a common theme. So the burning it down is we want change, but we don't want it to be destructive to everyone and everything around it. We need our government to be better for us and better serve us. And there's lots we could talk about that. And everyone's got different views of what that means. But again, people that we were running into weren't trying to destroy the system, but they were saying it's not working for me. And back to, I definitely got the sense of if you were running for president in 2028, there's messages there, right? Where people want someone that they believe in, they can respect, are proud of as president, and that they would want to model their behavior after. But they also want someone who says, "I hear you, and I'm going to address many of the issues that people are struggling with." And you hear them all, right? And we did not talk politics, but you hear, people struggling with inflation. Absolutely heard about healthcare. Absolutely heard about mental health. Absolutely heard about opioid crises. Absolutely heard about all those things, from sheriffs struggling with them to everyday people struggling with them, and saying we need help in solving these problems. And you get to what they're looking for in someone who's going to be running for whatever office you're going to talk about, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, and we've talked here on this show a fair bit about sort of this false paradigm of kind of this left, right, red, blue thing. And you've talked about that too, saying that the real divide isn't red, blue, but it's more about these other issues like economic struggle, dignity. So, and being with that hopeful thinking, I mean, how do you think we can build unity around those things?
Well, I think you got to step back from the issues first, right? You can't get to any issue if you haven't addressed this idea of culture of building unity, right? Because right now we get to the fighting, right? We have to say we want to get to talking and listening and learning and respecting each other to do that. And so where Us United starts is we are apolitical and certainly not partisan, but we're not in politics, right? We do not have points of views on issues because we're trying to say whatever your point of view of an issue, we got to come together and we've got to learn how to respect each other and want to solve problems. So we've got to change that view, because right now the view that's rewarded is let's go pound it out. Let's get to the corners. Let's yell. Let's fight. Let's whatever it may be. Because 15% round numbers on each side, that's what they do. And that's who we hear, right? We hear it on TV. We hear it on podcasts. We hear it on social media. We hear it everywhere because that's what the media and the politicians present. They're incented to do that, right? Media is a money making model, whether you're Meta or whether you're Fox News or whether you're CNN owned by Warner Brothers. You got to make money. And how do you make money? You don't make money by singing Kumbaya. You make money by disagreeing, and people pay attention. And you got to be outrageous to get an eyeball because, right? And I heard that from everybody. The massive blame was social media and media in general, but certainly technology. Again, whether you're 20 or 80 and wherever you lived, people changing behavior, different question. So to solve the problems, we start with changing that culture and saying to the 70% of us that don't agree with it, you have to engage with it, because my simple diagnosis of the big part of the problem is most of us in today was election day recently, right? Most of us show up every 2 years or 4 years. This was an off cycle election, but most show up every 2 or 4 years, hold their nose and vote. And they're like, oh my God, this is gross. This is awful. The rhetoric, the people, like, I'll vote. You know what? I am completely out. I'm going back to work, to school, to TikTok. I don't like what I hear and I can't change it. So I'm out. And the problem is that is a death spiral, because the more you or I or your listeners withdraw for good reason, the only voices left are those extreme voices. And then you show up 2 years later, it's only worse. And you're like, how did it get worse? Well, it got worse because you're not in the room. If all of us participated a little bit, and I don't mean necessarily in politics, but in the culture, right? Of simple things, right? Start with, if every one of us posted once a week in our social media an act of kindness or community service or community building that we did or we saw someone do, we took a picture or video and we posted that and shared that in our socials. Everyone in America did that once a week. The algorithm will change, as a simple example. The culture will change because all of a sudden there's a very different messaging going on. So I say to everybody, you can do that. We have a unity pledge for Us United. You go take it. And one of the ways to honor it is do what I just said. Once a week, post something positive, and maybe don't respond to the negative. Like, the corollary of that is, if you stop participating in the negative, don't get baited into it, and you posted something positive, well, that would change a lot, is an example, right? Another one, I'm in purple. I'm like the purple guy now. I've always liked it, but I now wear purple all the time because red and blue make purple. How about you wear purple and post a picture of you wearing purple? Say, I'm for unity. I'm wearing purple today. Imagine if millions of people, we had purple days, and a day a week or a day a month, millions of people wore purple. I bet you the media covers that. I bet you it sends a message that there's a big group of purple people out there. Eventually, that translates to different people might run for office. And all of a sudden, you're part of a movement like Us United. There's a place that anyone in purple can go and find people who think the same way and talk to them. Because right now, they talk to the red and the blue extremes because those are the people who participate. So little things like that, if we don't do that, we are not going to change our government. We are not going to change our culture. We are not going to change how we solve any of the issues that you were asking about, from income equality to healthcare to guns to drug addiction or immigration or anything else. So that's where Us United sits, and we're inviting everybody into that conversation by not saying you got to take a position on an issue. You got to take a position on unity, on respect, on communication, on listening, because then you'll get to the issue. Because you and I may disagree, David, on a lot of things, but we now have a relationship, and our relationship is because we've been on a Zoom together, in this case, or in a room together. We're going to have some respect for each other. I'm not going to sit there and say, you are, F this, F that, everything, and I disagree with you. I'm going to hear you, and you're going to hear me. And that's what we have to find, and that's how we move forward.
Yeah, there's so many threads I want to pull there. Uh, One thing I was going to say when you were in the beginning there, and we were talking about sort of doing something like posting something once a week, some
Mhm.
action. Sometimes people, hear something like civic action or community action or something, and they think it's like some big thing, right?
Right.
Maybe you did a potluck dinner like in your neighborhood. Maybe you just
Right.
while walking the dogs talk to some of your neighbors. Like it doesn't have to be a really big thing.
Correct. And I think that's the impediment is it seems like it needs to be a big thing. Well, I'm not the president, back to my question, or I'm not on TV as a news anchor, so I can't influence people. BS. I mean, I'll give you Halloween recently. Again, it's always important to marry someone smarter than you. My wife, we were talking,
100%.
she's like, 100%, 100,000%. My wife said, hey, we were talking about this. She said, Halloween is the only day a year we literally invite strangers to our home, right? So isn't that a unity moment, or it could be, right? So we posted this on our Us United socials, and we did this. We had little printouts. I'll find it around. Well, I have stickers but we had little printouts that basically had a purple pumpkin. It said "Be Community" on it, and had our social media and say National Unity Day is December 13th, 2025. But with the candy, we handed out things to say, hey, you know, National Unity Day is coming. Take a look at this. And people are like, oh, that's cool. What's that? Right. And you ask people, you say hello, you thank them. Like we built a little bit of unity on one day when we invite people to our home, right? That took very little effort, right? We were handing out candy anyway. We were talking to people anyway. And there's an example. You can do something like that, and it's so low bar of what you're doing. But again, maybe next year we have a partner. Maybe we get Hershey's as a partner, and we do that with every candy you hand out. Hershey's encouraged. You said, I mean, I'm who knows, but like those are little things you don't. It's but those little things build, and I think that's what's the power. That's why we have a democracy. We get to vote, right? 200 million people can vote. Those, if we didn't believe that that mattered, we wouldn't have a democracy. Well, it's the same thing here.
Exactly. And those little things, those little things, they are strengthening your community. They're potentially strengthening, and then
Right.
so you're also strengthening democracy.
Right. We were one of my favorite, and we've posted this on our social media during our trip. One of my favorite conversations, a woman in Birmingham, Alabama, she and her mother owned two restaurants, and they cooked them, and worked incredibly hard. And she said, look, I practice the 5 mile rule. So if I am, and this is how I build unity, within my 5 miles of where I live, if I'm nice to people, I ask my neighbors how they're doing, I volunteer in my community, I pay attention to local government, and I try to make it a better place, I'm building unity within my 5 miles. If I don't have to worry about can I unify with someone in Texas or California, 5 miles from where I live in Birmingham. So if everyone does that, the country's unified because every 5 miles overlaps, and it's brilliant, right? Because you could sit here and you could be sitting in Texas and say, I could never get along with that person living in LA, right? We are night and day politically. Can't imagine unifying. But if you start with your 5 mile rule, eventually it gets to that person in California. And if you're all doing it, eventually you're connecting to each other in a way that is respectful, right? That's the right word, respectful. And then we go forward from there. Not unanimity, but respect.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, so let's talk about National Unity Day a little bit. So it's December. The first one is December 13th. Was that the second Saturday of every month of every December?
The second Saturday of every December will be National Unity Day, which this year makes it December the 13th. And it's on the National Day calendar, which is the official calendar of call it all kinds of different days, from National Cookie Day to National Marine Corps Day. But they only accept 20 out of 30,000 applications a year for national unit for anything for a national day. And so we applied thinking that's something this country could need and rally behind. And they kept back and said, this is exactly why we have the National Day calendar. We love this. Let's go. Right. And so
Right. So you've already talked about this a little bit, but what is its core purpose, and what's the best way for individuals to sort of participate?
well, the core purpose is really to have that moment where we all can take a step back and say, hey, let's think about unity. we're here, right? Like, what can we do? And take that moment. And again, it's back to little actions. If we all take them, make a big impact, and it gives people something to rally behind. So that's the highest of levels that of why we helped create it. And again, it's not an Us United thing. It is a anybody anything thing. And so what can you do? Right? You can do small, medium, and large things, right? We picked the day because we do a large thing that day at Us United. We have something called the Holiday Giving Spectacular, where this will be the sixth year of it, where sheriffs in the communities come together. Families are nominated by the community who need help and necessities. We raise all the goods. We raise funds to solve problems that people have. Like I'm going to lose my job if I don't make a car payment, or I need a new tire, or I can't afford my medicine. Really trying to solve people's problems. And so we do that in probably it'll be 50, 60, 70 different counties and sheriffs across the country this year. That's on the big side. Come volunteer in that. The other end of the small side is, hey, back to what we said earlier. That's the day you post something positive that you saw or you did in your community and share a story of unity in your community. That's the day you wear purple and share that story. That's a day where I think almost everybody at this point, and most people in this country, have a family member or friend that either you're not even speaking with, or that relationship has really become frayed because of politics. How about National Unity Day as your excuse to pick up the phone, call that, and important, call that person. Don't text them, don't email them. Call that person and say, hey, today's National Unity Day. I don't know if you knew that, but it made me realize I miss you. We shouldn't be fighting over X, Y, or Z. We don't have to agree, but we can still be friends. We're still family, whatever it may be. Let's put that behind us and let's reconnect. Like, you have that's an excuse. You had a day that was set aside. You have an excuse. It's not put pride, put ego aside, and say that's a simple thing you can do on National Unity Day, right? Or volunteer anywhere else in your community. Those are little things that make huge difference. And if we all do it on December 13th, maybe we say, that was kind of fun. Let's do it on the 14th, or let's do it on December 20th. Or, hey, we can do it on Christmas, or we can do it on New Year's. Like, make it part of your routine. And so that's why we've created it, and it creates a focal point as a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Um, so before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, because I hear a lot of this kind of thing about, this stuff is just mushy middle, and I don't want to give up my values. So how do you respond to critics who say those kinds of things? Like, unity is just a feel good thing, and it's not going to help us get over our true, deep conflicts and the world's injustices.
Well, I sit there and say, I start with, has that ever worked? If you run in and has it ever worked in history? Probably not. But let's even talk to the micro. If you go in and say to somebody, I'm right, you're wrong, maybe not in those exact words, but effectively, right? Have you changed anyone's mind with that? Or has anyone changed your mind with that? No, it just doesn't. That's one. Two, our beliefs and are driven by our own experiences. That's normal. And are educated, lots of pieces, right? But let's just simplify it to say our beliefs on many things come from our experiences, very broadly defined. There are lots of other experiences we have not had that we need to understand to find common ground. And so, example of what that means to me, right? As an example, because I heard this and did this a lot on our road trip, right? I had a conversation with one of my favorite stories, and is I met this woman named Misty in Victor, Montana. She was running a t-shirt stand at a town fair that sold, MAGA t-shirts, all the things that drive people nuts. And by the way, I had a similar conversation with Misty with a gentleman named John who was at a t-shirt store in Omaha, Nebraska, selling equally offensive t-shirts on the liberal side of pick your issue, right? Like, and similarly, both similar things on the as I talked to him, but I'll focus on the Misty story because we talked about a lot of things, and we talked about immigration, and she said, and I said, well, what's up with immigration? And she said, look, we need to get rid of people from this country who don't love America. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? And she said, I'll give you an example. She said, Arabs don't love don't love America. I said, well, why do you say that? A couple seconds, explain. I said, look, let me tell you a story, right? Um, I said, one of the largest Arab American community in this country is in Michigan, in Dearborn Heights and Hamtramck and near in Dearborn. I spent a lot of time there because um, my friend Chris is sheriff of Michigan, running for governor of Michigan. And so we were at a fundraiser, and I'm telling the story to Misty, of a city council person running for reelection announcing that Arab American, 200 plus people in a little restaurant. Before that fundraiser started, every single person stood up and they sang the national anthem. Everyone. And I telling this story, and I said, Misty, I've been to a lot of fundraisers for lots of things with lots of white people, and that's never happened. I've never seen that. And she looked at me and she said, wow, I did not know that. You've changed my opinion. Clearly, I cannot make that generalization effectively. Now, that's an incredibly extreme example, right? But the point of that is we're driven by our experiences. And if you tell someone they're wrong and you're right, they're not going to listen. If you share with someone an experience personally you've had, or your family member, or your friend, or whomever it is has had, they can't tell you you're wrong. It's your experience, right? And through that, people will listen. We're humans, are storytellers, and they will change their minds to some degree. So I think, to your question, unity really matters because we have to understand different experiences to understand where we can find that compromise. And there are places we can't. We're going to agree to disagree. There are fundamental issues for sure. But we're not going to bully someone into agreeing with us. We have a democracy. People sometimes don't get what they want. The majority does. That's why unity is not unanimity. But it requires conversation, because even if the most passionate issue for someone, whether it's race, whether it's abortion, whether it's guns, whatever it is, someone else has a different experience. You may not agree, but you can, in hearing their experience, understand the humanity that's there and say, I can still have a relationship with you and we can agree to disagree. We don't have to agree to hate. And that's where it matters, because hate is going to destroy all of us. That is not helpful for anybody. And that's why I'm so passionate about this.
Yeah, I love it. So, talked several times about how after your trip and just in general with this project, you've become much more hopeful about the country, which is great. We all need that. So maybe you can help pass some of that along in giving sort of a message of what fueled that hope. What message would you share with those who feel disengaged and disheartened by everything going on, particularly with the current dialogue?
Well, I think a couple of things. First, I remind everybody that the dialogue that you're hearing generally from our politicians and our media are from two camps that are invested in and rewarded for division. So don't be surprised, right? Media to make money and politicians for power. And that's no criticism. It is the system. And as I said, it reflects the culture they're getting back from us. So, one, don't let it get you down. You just, because it's going to, that's what it's incented to do. That's one. Two, I say to all of my friends who get all worked up and whatever, I'm like, don't just get angry, do something. Because if you do something, you'll feel better. And again, to what we said earlier, that something doesn't have to be what Adam did and spent 2.5 months driving across the country, started a movement for unity. Like, I am not saying that kind of something, but do something, whether that is what you're posting in socials and positive stories. Hey, check a neighbor. You see someone who needs a coffee in line, buy them a coffee, buy someone a sandwich if you can, or be the recipient thereof. Sometimes just give a compliment. Hey, David, you look like how are you? I don't know you, but you look like you're having a tough day. Is everything okay? Just asking that question, right? You feel better. And the person who asked it felt better. And there's scientific studies that the three people who heard it around you who didn't do anything feel better, right? That makes a difference. And so find the thing. And then if you want to volunteer somewhere, you want to get engaged with something, that's great. But if you do nothing but fume at the news or at the politicians or the social media, yeah, it's going to bring you down. Do something positive in response. I think if everyone just did that, we'd come a long way. And so that's the hope I saw. That's the hope I heard. And that's the message and the hope I'm trying to share with people. Like the insights, it's not, it doesn't have to be Herculean. It can be done.
Yeah, I love the 5 mile thing too. That's a great way to think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really good.
Well, Adam Mizel, thank you so much for sharing those insights, and we will make sure we have all that information on the show notes and on our website. So yeah, if you can find a way to get involved or do any little thing that Adam's talking about, that's a huge step. Adam, again, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Please. Please. Thank you.
That is it for this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. For links to everything we talked about on this episode, go to outrageoverload.net. If something in this episode sparked a thought or maybe even lit a fire, I'd love to hear from you. You can leave a voice message or even schedule a quick one-on-one chat right from our contact page at outrageoverload.net/contact. If you found this episode valuable, please share it or leave a review. It really helps. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.